In the summer of 1893, a literature professor named Catherine Lee Bates traveled by horse and wagon from Colorado Springs to Pikes Peak. When she stood there at the summit, looking down from the Front Range of the Rockies, the land seemed to go on in front of her forever. She was transfixed by a rolling plain that she called a sea-like expanse of fertile country. She found herself spiritually and emotionally transformed. She went back to her hotel room after the outing and sat down to write about what she had seen. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. That poem, which went on to become one of America's most cherished pieces of patriotic music, was not a celebration of what America had achieved. It was instead a kind of prayer for what America could become if God saw fit to shed his grace on thee. America the Beautiful is not an ode to American freedom or American power. The entire poem builds toward its final couplet, the eager hope that God will crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. When Catherine Lee Bates stood there on Pikes Peak facing the openness and abundance of the American West, what bloomed inside her was an unexpected impulse toward unity, toward oneness and solidarity with her fellow Americans. It is a worthy and powerful aspiration that when we are faced with enormity, with unbounded opportunity, that we might move not toward egotism or entitlement, but instead toward humility and human connection. It's the same lesson taught by the Hebrew prophet Micah, who expressed it in arguably the greatest moral lesson from the prophetic canon, that when you are blessed with great prosperity and privilege, you may find yourself tempted to make exorbitant, glamorous demonstrations of your wealth. But Micah says no. What God demands of you instead is this: only to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly with your God. This week, our nation, this place of purple mountains and fruited plains, will make its way toward its 250th year of independence. There will be plenty of national commemorations of America's semi-quincentennial, some of them solemn and some festive, some anguished and some hopeful. As we enter this historic week, we can, I think, use the prophet's threefold instruction to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly as a moral yardstick with which the legacy of our republic can be assessed. Do justice is Micah's first instruction, and it was also the first stated purpose of the newborn union put forth in the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. It's placed right there before ensuring domestic tranquility, before promoting the general welfare. The founders prioritized the establishment of justice before all else. From its beginning, the American project was an argument about the architecture of justice. What structures will ensure the rule of law even when human virtue fails? The founders were not naive about human nature. They knew that justice requires sound institutions, not just lofty ideals. The Federalist Papers pointed out that if men were angels, no government would be necessary. A nation of laws will crumble without a solid infrastructure. The entire history of our republic is one long, impassioned argument about what justice means, what remedies we may turn to when the doing of justice falls short of the founders' high-minded vision. Micah's second command is to love mercy. Notice, justice is something to be done. Mercy is something we should love. It is an internal imperative, not an outward obligation. Like Catherine Bates wrote in her poem when she felt her heart seized By the thrill of national possibility, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. It is a rigorous internal discipline, the development of an honest love of compassion and mercy, and it's vitally important. We have to love kindness generously and prevent ourselves, even when we do good, from collapsing into sentimentality or paternalism. The Statue of Liberty lifts her lamp to the harbor and welcomes in the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. She doesn't ask for the talented or the wealthy. She asks for the homeless, the tempest-tossed. Our national generosity is supposed to be the sort that requires nothing in return, but only hard work and good character. Our national hospitality is supposed to incline toward the huddled masses with nothing to offer in exchange. Now, this next story I'm going to share with you isn't quite as noble as the inscription on the Statue of Liberty, but it's the best story I heard this week, and so I want to share it with you. It's the story about a Japanese tourist who came to Houston for the World Cup. He came here to watch the game, and while he was here, he decided he wanted to try Mexican food. So he found a restaurant, went in, sat down at a table, and as soon as he did, the chips and salsa arrived on his table. So he stopped the waiter to tell him that he hadn't ordered them, and the waiter replied, "They just come with the table, man." Wanting to be a good guest, he finished the whole basket. And no sooner had he done so than a new basket arrived. And he started eating faster and faster. But every time he finished them, the chips were replaced as quickly as they were depleted, one basket after another, after another, after another. After his meal, he went back and wrote the following: "Generosity that arrives before the request cannot be repaid. In my country, every gift creates an obligation. Here, the gift arrives before you have even proven you can pay for dinner. This is not an appetizer. This is a declaration. We trust you. Eat." Most of us don't see chips and salsa as an expression of American kindness and beneficence, but I love that he did. I love that he learned that Americans give before we are asked. I love that he saw how we can trust others before they prove their worthiness to pay back a debt. I love that he went home knowing that the chips come with the table, man. Micah's last instruction, to walk humbly with God, is arguably the most difficult of the three to find a home for in America's national identity, especially these days. This era of American history is at an unprecedented time of swagger and braggadocio, of unbridled ego, of self-aggrandizement and self-importance. Our nation, at many times in the past, has seen itself as the shining city on the hill, but these days American exceptionalism seems to be veering more sharply than ever toward the conviction that we alone have God on our side. The Civil War was almost over in March of 1865 when President Lincoln delivered his second inaugural address. He would have had perfectly good reason to claim that God was on his side. The Union was prevailing. He was about to cement his legacy as the great emancipator. Although the address contains quite a bit of religious language, Lincoln refused to claim that divine favor was smiling on the Union. What he said instead was this: the Almighty has his own purposes. In other words, I don't know what God wants for America. But, he went on to say, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in. In a way, Lincoln's second inaugural was Micah's prophecy, placed in the grammar of Civil War era America. In our quest to construct and reconstruct American justice, we must do so humbly, because our sight is limited. God's purposes exceed our understanding. Lincoln wasn't describing the Republic as he saw it then in the spring of 1865. He was praying for what he hoped it would become after the war ended. His hope is one that many of us still share today as America approaches this momentous anniversary, about just what sort of America our better angels will aid us in rebuilding. In 1776, June 28th was a Friday. It was just a few days before the Declaration of Independence would be signed. Jefferson's draft of the document had been presented to Congress in preparation for its proclamation of American independence from the British Crown. And that night, June 28th, was Shabbat. And in synagogues across America, the Torah portion they read was the same one we read this weekend. And when the Haftorah readers stepped up to the pulpits in New York City and Newport, Rhode Island, in Charleston and Savannah and Philadelphia and Richmond, they read the Haftorah portion that comes from the book of Micah. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. What were they thinking then, those Jews in their colonial synagogues? Did they imagine that the prophet was speaking to them from across the ocean of history? In their worship, that Shabbat, did they pray that the new nation that would be formed 5 days later would be a place of justice and mercy and humility? What was their prayer? And is it the same as ours today? America has very nearly reached her 250th birthday at a time when the prophet's entire threefold imperative is under great strain in our national life. Justice is being tested, mercy is ridiculed, and humility is in dangerously short supply. The question still remains about whether there is a way forward toward fulfilling that prophetic vision. I think there is, and I think the road toward it passes through Lincoln's vision for our national future, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on. That is the work of justice. That's the impulse of loving kindness. That is the slow and steady progress of walking in humility. It is enough of a prayer for a nation still trying, 250 years on, still striving, still climbing toward the summit, each of us adding our tiny, hopeful notes to the great American poem about what we hope to become. May God strengthen our union. May God bless us all from sea to shining sea.